Stop looking for buyers. You don't need a buyer's list. You need a buyer. Cash buyer first, deal second is not the best use of time. I'm gonna show you how easy it is to find a buyer. In fact, stop JVing your deals. You don't really need to do that when you know how to find a buyer. Now in today's video, I'm gonna show you everything you need to know and understand about cash buyers. Okay, first of all, when it comes to buyers, it's important to understand who the buyers are in the market and where they fit in the ecosystem from highest to lowest paying buyers. So think about it. If we were to take a buyer in the marketplace that's retail, they are going to be the highest paying buyer. They're retail. They're going to pay fair market value because they're going to live in the home. Their use is to live in the home, not make money. So they're going to be the highest paying buyer. The next one is going to be a buy and hold investor. Buy and hold investor. Now, why a buy and hold investor? Because they're renting it for cash flow and they're not going to invest as much into the property, most likely. They're going to do some carpet and paint, some minimal repairs. They're not going to be doing new cabinets and granite and all these things because it's a rental. And they're interested in cash flow so they can pay more. And then the lowest paying buyer is the fix and flipper. Fix and flipper. Why? Because they have to buy it at the deepest discount because they have to add value, resell it, and make a profit. They're all about that profit on the deal, so they have to buy deep enough. So when you're looking at deals or when you're considering who are the potential buyers and how do I make money as an investor, especially a wholesaler, you need to understand if I take my deal to market to a buyer, who's my ideal buyer? Now, what is the best way to bring deals to these different types of buyers? Well, if you're a wholesaler, you're probably gonna bring a cash deal to a fix and flipper because they need it at a big discount. You're gonna bring it to them cash. You're gonna get an assignment fee more than likely and make a markup on it and bring that deal to the fix and flipper. Same with a buy and hold investor. You're gonna bring them a cash deal. They're gonna buy it cash, maybe do some improvements. They're gonna do a refinance and try to hold it long term. Now, a buy and hold investor is also interested in creative. So if you bring them a creative deal, because now they can get into the deal without traditional financing, so maybe there's an entry fee, but they'll pay a lot more for a creative deal because the financing's already in place. They don't have to qualify for it. So those are two deals that you can bring to a buy and hold investor, whether it's long-term rental, short-term rental, or whatever. And then retail is you're just gonna bring that to them, and if it's the ideal property for a retail buyer, they're gonna go get traditional financing and buy it. Now this is what I call the takedown method. And this is where you actually buy it at a discount, put it back on the market, and sell it to a retail buyer. And that's gonna get the highest price. So if we put some numbers at this, let's just say that the value of this property is $150,000. That's what a retail buyer would pay. That's the as-is market value. Let's say a buy and hold investor would pay, $125 for that deal, that same deal, so that a little bit less of a price. And then a flipper might be at $100,000 or $80,000 or somewhere less. Okay, so see the difference? Lowest paying buyer, next highest paying buyer, the highest paying buyer in the market. And that's the order of things. Now, for the most part, if we're gonna do wholesaling and we're looking at an assignment of contract or a double close, which is traditional wholesaling, then we're gonna be focusing on these two, a flipper or a buy and hold investor as our ideal buyer. Some properties, depending on the price point, it's probably 80 to 90% chance it's a flipper. So if it's a higher priced home, it's probably a flipper. And then your lower priced homes, that cash flow, like in the 200,000, under 200,000, those could go either way. It could go to a flipper or it could go to someone that wants to hold it for a rental as cash flow. Okay, so that's our buyer, understanding our buyer. Now, who is the ideal buyer for a deal, for your deal? And this goes right into this misconception that a lot of people have around a cash buyer. I see a lot of training out there that says, go find a cash buyer first. Now that you've got a list of cash buyers, like let's say you go get 20 cash buyers, find out what they want, and then now go find deals for them. We call that reverse wholesaling. Now there's nothing wrong with that, that's fine. So I don't wanna say that that doesn't work or that's not a good strategy. Perfectly legit strategy. The problem I have with it is I don't think it's the best use of time. And as a wholesaler, especially when I got started, I had some time and no money. So time was critical. If you're watching this right now and you're trying to get into wholesaling and you're side hustling it, you got a job, or even if you're full-time and you're trying to maximize your hours, cash buyer first, deal second is not the best use of time. Here's why. Once you learn how to find a buyer, that part's easy. I'm gonna show you how easy it is to find a buyer. In fact, stop JVing your deals. You don't really need to do that when you know how to find a buyer. Who would be the ideal buyer for your deal? Well, it would be somebody who's local. Now, why local? Because they're intimate with the market. They know what's going on. They need to be active. Active meaning they're doing deals currently. Doesn't matter if they did a deal 5 years ago. I want a cash buyer who's active. They're actively doing deals in the last 6 to 12 months. And then the third thing would be they're in the same neighborhood as your deal. That's like bonus. That's your ideal buyer. Somebody in the neighborhood, local to the market, and actively doing deals. That's your ideal buyer. If you could pick any buyer out in the marketplace, who would be the most interested in your deal? It would be this, local, active, and in the same neighborhood. Okay, so if that's the case, and you have a deal, and you found your deal first, step one, find a good deal. Step two, find the buyer. Once you have that good deal, now you need to follow my neighborhood flipper method. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna look for 3 different types of local active flippers in the same neighborhood. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna look at sold flips. Now, how do we look for sold flips? What we're gonna do is we're gonna go on Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, and we're gonna look for properties that sold at the top of the market, the highest priced homes that are renovated. How do we know they're renovated? 3 things. We know they're renovated because it's gonna be all new, everything's fixed up, it's gonna be vacant, because it's a flipper, and it might be staged, okay? Everything brand new, it's gonna be vacant because it's a flipper. There's no personal items in the house, so look at the closets and things, you'll know right away that it's a flipper. And it's, in a lot of cases, they're staged, they got furniture in them. That's how you know it's a flipper. And it's priced at the highest price. So we're gonna look at those sold flips. Now, when you see that sold flip, you're gonna go back 12 months in the neighborhood. So start at your neighborhood, draw a circle around it, tell Zillow or Redfin, I wanna see sold homes. You're gonna go to the price filter and say, I wanna see the highest priced homes. You're gonna look at those and say, okay, here we go. This is a flipper. How do I know? Because everything's new, it's vacant, and it's staged. And then I'm gonna look at the price history. Now you can go to propwire.com. You can look at what happened, what the transaction was, and probably what you'll see is okay, it sold for $150,000, and then 4 months later, it sold for $265,000. And you're like, okay, that was a flipper. They bought it low, sold it high within 4 or 6 months. I know that's a flipper. How do I get a hold of this flipper? Well, I could try to find that guy or girl, and I could skip trace them and try to reach out to them. There's a faster way to do it. What we're gonna do is, since it's sold on market, we're gonna call the agent that represented the listing. So on these sold flips, we're gonna call the listing agent, because that listing agent represented the flipper. Now, what I find is a lot of times it is the flipper, because a lot of active flippers, once they're doing 25, 30 or more deals a year, they get their license and they list their own properties, or their office or company lists their own properties. So now you're direct right to the flipper. If it is a listing agent, then you're gonna say to the listing agent, I see that you represented a flipper on 123 Main Street. I've got a deal right around the corner, wondering if your investor is interested in another deal in the same neighborhood. Now that agent's gonna be highly motivated. Here's why. You don't have to pay them, because they're gonna go to their investor, they're gonna bring value and say, hey, I got another deal that you might be interested in. I know an investor's selling a property, let's take a look at it. Now, if that cash buyer buys your deal, that agent gets what? Another listing. See how they're motivated? You don't have to compensate them. If the agent says, well, am I getting paid for this? I'll say to them, well, here's my number. You can add your fee on top of it if you want. But remember, I'm also shopping this to other people. And if you add on too big of a fee, it's gonna price you out of the deal. So I would focus on the back end. That's what I tell agents, right? Focus on getting the relist once it's fixed up and ready to sell again. So that's how I handle sold flips. That's the first way. The second way is active flips. So it hasn't sold yet. So now I'm gonna switch my filter on Zillow, and I'm gonna say, don't show me sold, show me actives, go to the highest price. I'm gonna look for the same thing, all new, vacant, and maybe staged. Then I'm gonna say, okay, well, those are flippers right now. Maybe that flipper is gonna be thinking about his next deal. Maybe he's ready to buy again because he's got that one done and up for sale. This one, they sold it, so now they're probably looking for another deal. This one, it's active, trying to sell it. They're probably looking for another deal. Same thing, we're gonna contact the listing agent on the active. That's the third way to find these neighborhood flippers. And this is all free, it's right there, it's easy. In 2 minutes, you can have this information. The third one is gonna be sold from the bottom. This is the all cash. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to our sold filter, And rather than look at the top price, which are flips, we're gonna look at the bottom price. We're gonna look at the stuff that sold at the very lowest prices. Now, who are they? Well, those are probably distressed properties. That's probably a flipper who bought it. And what are they doing right now? They're probably fixing it up right now. So we're gonna reach out now to this one we're gonna call the buyer's agent, because the buyer's agent represented that flipper on the purchase. So that one we call the buyer's agent. I see that you represented an investor, you bought that property. I'm guessing that you guys are fixing it up right now. I got another deal, are you interested? Okay, so 3 different ways to do this neighborhood flipper model. And again, you can do this all for free. Now what's really cool is if you go to propwire, you can do all of this a lot faster and easier. There are 2 filters. There's a cash buyer filter, and it's just gonna tell you all buyers that are cash. And what you wanna do with the cash buyer filter in propwire, you wanna make this non-owner. I'm left-handed here, guys, so bear with me, non-owner. So you don't wanna look at cash buyers that are owner occupants, meaning it's a homeowner who paid cash. You want investors that paid cash. And then you might say, okay, I want people that bought cash in the last year. So I'm not looking at old cash buyers, I'm looking at active cash buyers. Okay, that's your filter in propwire. It's gonna give you a list, and you're gonna start there. It also has in propwire what we call flipped properties. And the way that the software algorithm works on the flip properties is it's just taking 18 months. So it's saying, okay, any transactions that transferred in 18 months. Now, some of those might be just deed transfers or from somebody's entity to another one, or interfamily transfers, things like that. So you wanna go into the history and you wanna look and say, okay, did an investor buy it, and did they turn around and resell it in a short period of time? And is there a price difference, right? Like that example I said where, okay, I see that they paid $150 for it and 4 months later they sold it for $265. That's a flipper. So you're gonna go through and you're gonna do that investigative work. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna go back and look up the agent and call the agent. So this is a really fast tool to do this. But here's the thing, guys, here's what's nuts about this. Every time I do this, and by the way, even though I have a buyer's list, I do this method every time because I wanna find a new buyer, and I know even if I have a 10,000 cash buyer list, even if it's that big, I know that if I can find a new cash buyer not on my list that is local active in the same neighborhood, that's gonna even be better than probably anybody else on my list, because that's the ideal buyer for that deal as I explained it, okay? So I still do that. Now, I found that it takes about 12 to 15. That's it, it doesn't take that much. In fact, I just did a student interview where he did this method, and the very first agent he called on a sold flip was his buyer for $20,000 more, right? Like it works. So it doesn't take a lot. Now here's what I do. You're looking for, remember, a cash buyer. That doesn't mean we don't still build a cash buyer list. We build it as we go. Build the list as you go, but don't worry about the list, go get a deal. I've never not found a buyer if I had a deal. Now, I've not found a buyer because I don't have a deal, but if I've got a good deal, I will find a buyer. It's the same with money. If I've got a good deal, I always find the money for the deal. So stop worrying about the buyer and start making calls and getting on the phones and finding a good deal. Because once you find that good deal, you will be able to find the buyer, especially if you use my neighborhood flipper method. So you're looking for a buyer and building the list as you go. So let's say that I contact 15 of doing the neighborhood flipper model. And let's say that I find my buyer, which is awesome. And let's say that there are 14 others that blow me off, or the agent doesn't follow up, or whatever. Now, because I went to the agent, I don't have that cash buyer on my list because I went to the agent. Smart, because it's faster. But after the fact, after I get my deal done, I'm going back to those 14 other flippers, and now I'm gonna do my research. I'm gonna go ahead and figure out who that buyer was. I'm gonna skip trace them. I'm gonna call them up and I'm gonna say, hey, looks like this one didn't work for you. Can I add you to my list? What are you looking for? And now I'm gonna add those 14 to my list. And I've got time now because the pressure's off. I found a buyer for my deal. I got my deal done. And now I'm gonna go back and do that investigative research to continue to build my list. That way, on the next deal, I've got 14, 15 new buyers added to my list. Now, what do I do on the next deal? Same thing, follow the same thing. If none of them bite, then now I'll put it out to my list. But I'm going here first every time, no matter how big my list is, I'm going to this method first to find a new buyer. Okay, does that make sense? So guys, I want you now to tell me and leave a comment and say, Jerry, I get it. I need a buyer, not a buyer's list. Time to go find a deal. I'm gonna worry about step 2 after I worry about step 1. All of this business, everything happens, the magic happens when you get a good deal, okay? I don't care what the interest rates are. I don't care what the market's doing. I don't care if it's winter time. I don't care about any of that. Get a good deal and all your problems are solved. Everything gets easier after that. Now, here's the thing. If you don't want to do any of this, if even this is too much work, then I'll be your buyer. I'll be your buyer. I'll buy your deal. I'm buying deals all across the country. Doesn't matter where it's at. I've got capital. I've got systems in place to buy them, fix them up, and flip them. And I'm looking for more deals. You go focus on getting a good deal. I have a program called the 10K Club. And if you go to my10kcheck.com, you can register for a free training. On that training, I'm gonna show you exactly what you need to do to find deals. I'll give you all the tools, the resources, the contracts, all the stuff, software, how to find the deals. You go do the work, find that great deal, submit it to me. I'll pay you $10,000 for your deal, for as many deals as you wanna do. Okay, so check that out. Go to my10kcheck.com. And guys, if you found this video helpful, leave a comment and say, Jerry, thank you for the breakdown. You're a flipping genius, and I'll see you on the next video.